What's up, guys? Back on the YouTube channel again. Today I just want to talk about angle control and how it isn't what it seems. Um, so there's a very specific way that angle should be done that'll prevent injury, it'll keep everything smoother, it'll eliminate some of the off-axis torque, and hopefully it'll give you a little bit more distance. Let's get into it. So there are two angles that we're concerned with when we're throwing a disc, and the first one is the hyzer angle. So the degree of hyzer or anhyzer that you throw a disc on. Anhyzer is when the disc is rolling up and away from you, and a hyzer is when it's falling towards the ground away from you. So that even if you throw a forehand, that's falling away from you, that's pointing towards the sky. That's the simple way to think about angles. When most people talk about angle, that's what they're talking about. We'll get into nose angle later, which is something I want to address some misconceptions for. But the thing about throwing these angles is your body determines everything. So if we think about this from a physics perspective, your body is acting as a gyroscope, right? And when you spin fast, as you should be when you're throwing, your body is essentially generating a centrifugal force in an arc around your body. And the direction of that force is 90 degrees to the axis of rotation. So for example, if I'm standing up nice and tall and I'm throwing a shot, rotating like this, then my axis of rotation is through the bottom of my, through my head, out the bottom, straight line. Take a 90-degree angle to there, that's where the disc is being pulled to. So you'll notice a lot of pro players, the best example is, go look at a video of Simon Lizotte throwing in slow motion. His reach back is on anhyzer. Gannon Buhr does the same. The thing is, they're throwing hard enough that once they pull through, that force that's acting on them, the centrifugal force from them spinning so quick, means the disc goes from anhyzer, it pops to flat naturally. So what we then have to understand is, if we can't modulate it based on how we move our arm, because you really can't, you can try, but it's really difficult to, the next best thing is doing this with our body. So if you notice throwers like Kevin Jones, go watch a video of him, he's very hunched over because his natural release is an extreme hyzer. Someone like Gannon is a lot more open and upright because he likes to throw flat to a tiny bit of anhyzer. So all you're doing when you're changing your angles is doing this. And then, like I say, that changes the direction of the axis of rotation. So our axis of rotation we talked about just before was straight up and down through my body. If I lean over, it's now pointing behind me and out in front like a unicorn, right? If we take 90 degrees to that, instead of being flat like it was before, it's now on a little bit of hyzer. So that's how you control your angles. If you want to throw an anhyzer, lean back. If you want to throw a hyzer, lean forward. That's all there really is to it. The other thing I want to address is the term anhyzer is in itself a misnomer. Again, I'm going to give you guys homework. Go watch maybe Drew Gibson throwing slow motion and watch him throw an anhyzer. It should be on some of like the overthrow videos. Basically, what I want to get you to understand is when people say anhyzer, they're not throwing on anhyzer. It's just that when you release with a little bit of wobble. The smoothest players in the world still have a little bit of wobble. That quickly fixes itself. If you've ever thrown with a little bit of wobble, you'll notice that it comes out like this and then sort of stabilizes after a while. That's called gyroscopic stabilization, right? What we also need to understand is because of that wobble, the parting line of the disc is essentially lowered, making it more understable and thus susceptible to high-speed turn. So when you're throwing a shot, it doesn't matter what it is, it's probably going to have a little bit of turn if you're throwing it flat. Which is why you see players like Drew Gibson, if you went and watched that slow motion, when he says he's throwing an anhyzer, he's actually throwing it flat, but because the shot always comes out with a little bit of wobble, it looks like it was released on anhyzer, because in the first couple, maybe 50 sort of feet, it's wobbled up to a tiny bit of anhyzer. So even overstable discs do this. The degree to which they do it depends on how overstable it is. Obviously, a tilt, even if it wobbles, it's not turning. But that is why something like a tilt could be a useful diagnostic tool to see what your actual release angle is. But if you're wanting to test how much wobble you're getting, throw putters. That is the best advice I can give you. The other angle you need to worry about is nose angle. Again, this is one that is filled with misconceptions. If I throw a high shot, like a spike hyzer, even if I throw it 100 feet in the air, it's not nose up. That's what I want to get into your head with this video. Even high shots that stall aren't usually nose up. So nose up is a term that refers to the nose angle of the disc as it's flying, but it actually only refers to it in reference to the vector of the disc's velocity. Right? So what that means is if the disc is traveling like this and it's got that nose up angle, then that's nose up, sure. But if this disc is on that same angle and is traveling upwards, you can sort of see how that is on the same plane as the velocity. So nose up is actually taken, or nose up, nose down, is taken in reference to the direction of its velocity. So what I see a lot of people get wrong, it's doesn't really matter, it's just terminology, but if you watch hole 18 at the Supreme Flight Open, Ezra Robinson tee shot, you might look at that and think, wow, he threw that so nose down. But realistically, he's throwing the shot downhill like this. So if the disc comes out on that angle there, that's because that's the way he's throwing it. So yeah, nose up, nose down is very commonly misdiagnosed. You want to throw ideally as nose down as possible. I don't think I've ever seen anyone throw two nose down. That's that. There are sort of two ways you can avoid throwing nose up. And the first one is your grip. What we're trying to achieve is whatever your throwing hand is, you want the knuckle of your index finger to be on top of the disc. So an easy way to do that is draw a line between the base of your ulna right here and in between your middle finger and your index finger. Imagine a line there, and then put the disc on the line, close your fingers over it like this, and then what you can do is just tuck that index finger under and your thumb on top, and just like that, you've got this knuckle pushing down on the front of the disc, which is what we want to throw a little bit more nose down. The only other thing it's a little bit harder to diagnose the root causes of, the only other thing that makes you throw nose up is swooping. So throwing like an ultimate player, coming from high, coming down low, and then releasing the disc. And this is what I mean about with reference to the velocity direction, sorry. So this would be fine if you then release the disc up here. So even though some players do start high, pull through low, come through high, they get away with it because they're keeping that disc on the plane when they release it, and their nose is thus down. If you're a player who reaches back high, comes through here, and then throws flat, you can see how that disc is going to come out on a nose up angle. So we want to get our nose down, we want to get our angles controlled, and you're good to go. See you in the next one.